What happens when a lottery pick becomes worth less than a decent meal? That's the brutal reality hitting the NBA right now, with Kobe Bufkin's trade to Brooklyn. Just 2 years after being selected 15th overall, this former Michigan standout was shipped off for what teams call cash considerations, basically pocket change in NBA terms. Most fans see this as just another routine transaction scrolling across their timeline. But dig deeper, and Bufkin's story reveals something much more unsettling about how quickly the league can write off young talent. This isn't just about one player's struggles. It's about a system that creates and destroys dreams with ruthless efficiency. Here's what really happened behind the scenes and why this trade should terrify every future draft pick. Kobe Bufkin arrived in Atlanta with legitimate expectations. During his sophomore season at Michigan, he wasn't just filling up the stat sheet, he was leading a program with serious championship aspirations. 14 points per game, nearly 5 rebounds, and close to 3 assists for the Wolverines. Those aren't empty numbers. They represented a player who could create offense in multiple ways. The Hawks saw exactly what they wanted when they used that 15th pick in 2023, a combo guard with size, court vision, and the kind of basketball IQ you can't teach. In college, Bufkin had that rare ability to make everyone around him better while still being a primary scoring threat. That's the profile that usually translates to NBA success. But professional basketball has a way of exposing every flaw, and Bufkin's weaknesses became magnified under the brightest lights. What looked like versatility in college started looking like a player caught between positions in the pros. The speed of the game, the athleticism of defenders, the precision required, it all became overwhelming quickly. Yet even with those early struggles, nobody expected his value to crater this dramatically. Which brings us to the question every front office dreads asking: when does patience become foolishness? December became the month that sealed Bufkin's fate in Atlanta. Just 10 games into what was supposed to be his breakout sophomore season, his shoulder gave out. Not just a minor tweak or something that could heal with rest. This required surgery and a complete shutdown for the remainder of the year. Season-ending shoulder surgery for a young guard trying to establish himself? That's career-altering territory. The Hawks suddenly found themselves with a player eating up roster space and salary while providing zero value. Meanwhile, other young guys on the team were getting opportunities that should have been Bufkin's. What made this injury particularly devastating was the timing. Bufkin had shown flashes during his G League stint the previous year, averaging over 23 points and nearly 6 assists with College Park. Those numbers suggested a player ready to make the jump to meaningful NBA minutes. Instead, he was back in a hospital bed wondering if his body could handle the demands of professional basketball. The shoulder instability issue also raised red flags about his long-term durability. Front offices keep detailed medical files on every player, and recurring injury concerns can destroy trade value faster than poor performance. Teams start viewing players as damaged goods rather than potential assets. But here's where the story gets really interesting, because while Atlanta was losing faith, Brooklyn was seeing something entirely different. The Nets didn't make this trade out of pity or desperation. They identified a specific type of value that Atlanta had given up on: developmental upside with minimal financial risk. When you're in full rebuild mode like Brooklyn, these are exactly the moves that can pay massive dividends down the road. Think about the Nets' perspective for a moment. They're collecting young talent and draft assets while maintaining maximum flexibility. Bufkin comes with 2 years left on his rookie contract at a reasonable number. If he never develops, they cut him and move on. If he blossoms into a rotation player, they just acquired a valuable piece for essentially nothing. Brooklyn also offers something Atlanta couldn't: patience and opportunity. The Hawks are trying to build around established stars and make the playoffs. Every roster spot and minute of playing time matters in that context. Young players like Bufkin become luxury items you can't afford to develop slowly. The Nets, on the other hand, can give Bufkin extended run without worrying about immediate results. Their coaching staff can focus purely on skill development rather than winning games. Sometimes that's exactly what a struggling young player needs: a change of scenery and lower expectations. Plus, Brooklyn has shown they're willing to take calculated risks on reclamation projects. Their entire roster construction strategy revolves around finding undervalued players and giving them platforms to rebuild their careers. Bufkin fits that profile perfectly. Here's what makes Bufkin's trade particularly fascinating. He actually proved he could dominate professional basketball, just not at the NBA level yet. Those numbers he put up with College Park weren't flukes or empty stats. 23.5 points per game in the G League means you're torching grown men who are fighting for their basketball lives. The G League isn't some rec center league anymore. It's filled with former college stars, international professionals, and guys who've had NBA cups of coffee. When you're putting up those scoring numbers while dishing out nearly 6 assists, you're demonstrating real basketball ability. The question becomes whether that translates upward. What's interesting is how quickly teams can forget G League success once NBA struggles pile up. It's like those dominant performances never happened once a player hits a rough patch at the highest level. But smart organizations remember those flashes and bet on the underlying skill set. Brooklyn is essentially wagering that Bufkin's G League production represents his true basketball ability, while his NBA struggles reflect opportunity, system fit, and health issues rather than talent limitations. That's a reasonable gamble when the cost is minimal. The real test will be whether Bufkin can bridge that gap between G League dominance and NBA contribution. History shows that some players need multiple opportunities and different environments to figure it out. Others never make that leap regardless of circumstances. Cash considerations trades reveal something uncomfortable about how front offices view young players. In theory, every draft pick represents hope and potential. In reality, teams are incredibly quick to abandon that investment when immediate results don't materialize. The Elects essentially admitted they'd rather have a small amount of cash and a roster spot than continue developing a former first-round pick. That's a damning evaluation of either their player development system or their assessment of Bufkin's potential. Either way, it suggests an organization that's lost patience with the development process. This trend is becoming more common across the league. Teams are less willing to invest years in developing players who don't show immediate promise. The salary cap creates too much pressure to maximize every roster spot and dollar. Young players get shorter leashes and fewer chances to figure things out. But here's the flip side. This creates opportunities for teams willing to think differently. Brooklyn is betting they can unlock value that Atlanta couldn't access. If they're right, they just acquired a rotation player for almost nothing. If they're wrong, they've lost virtually nothing trying. The modern NBA rewards both approaches. Contending teams can't afford to be patient with developmental projects. Rebuilding teams can afford to take risks on players other organizations have given up on. It's a market efficiency play disguised as a throwaway trade. Imagine being Kobe Bufkin right now. 2 years ago, you were a lottery pick with dreams of stardom. Now you've been traded for what amounts to lunch money. That has to mess with your head in ways that go beyond basketball. Professional athletes build their entire identity around being elite at their sport. When the market essentially declares you worthless, that creates psychological challenges that most fans never consider. Some players use that disrespect as motivation, others let it destroy their confidence completely. Bufkin has to process the reality that his original organization valued cap space and cash more than his potential. That's a brutal evaluation for any young person to handle, regardless of their profession. The question becomes whether he channels that hurt into determination or lets it become self-doubt. History shows that players in similar situations often have chip-on-the-shoulder careers. They remember being discarded and use that memory as fuel for years. Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, and countless others have talked about keeping lists of perceived slights throughout their careers. The Nets are hoping Bufkin falls into that category, a player motivated by being undervalued rather than crushed by it. His response to this trade will probably determine whether this becomes a steal for Brooklyn or just another failed reclamation project. This trade fits perfectly into Brooklyn's broader organizational philosophy. They've built their entire roster around players who needed second chances or different environments. It's a systematic approach to finding value in inefficiencies. Look at their recent history of taking on players other teams had given up on. Some work out, others don't, but the cost is always minimal and the upside can be significant. They're essentially running a rehabilitation center for struggling NBA talent. The beauty of this approach is that you only need a small percentage of these moves to work out for the strategy to be profitable. If Bufkin becomes even a solid rotation player, this trade looks genius in hindsight. If he flames out, nobody remembers or cares about the transaction. Brooklyn also has the infrastructure to maximize these types of players. Their coaching staff specializes in skill development and confidence building. Their front office understands that struggling young players need patience and consistent opportunity. Their culture is built around giving guys fresh starts. This environment gives Bufkin his best chance to salvage his career. Whether he takes advantage of it depends on factors that go way beyond basketball ability. Every young player entering the NBA should study Bufkin's story carefully. It demonstrates how quickly things can change and how little patience organizations actually have with struggling prospects. The margin for error is smaller than most people realize. Draft position provides some protection, but not as much as players think. Being selected in the lottery buys you maybe 2 years to prove you belong. After that, teams start viewing you as a sunk cost rather than an investment. The business realities of the salary cap make sentiment a luxury most organizations can't afford. This should also serve as a warning about the importance of health and availability. Bufkin's shoulder surgery came at the worst possible time in his development. Young players who miss extended time due to injury often never recover the momentum they lose during those crucial early years. The lesson for future prospects is simple. You get a narrow window to establish yourself, and that window closes faster than you expect. Teams will give up on lottery picks for pocket change if they don't see progress quickly enough. But there's also hope in Bufkin's story. Second chances exist for players willing to embrace them. Brooklyn is betting that talent and potential don't disappear just because one organization lost faith.
Sometimes all it takes is a different environment and lower pressure to unlock what was always there. Bufkin's career trajectory over the next 2 years will determine whether this trade becomes a cautionary tale or a redemption story. He's got a clean slate in Brooklyn with coaches who specialize in player development and an organization that's built around patience. The physical tools are still there: the size, the basketball IQ, the shooting ability that made him attractive as a prospect. The question is whether he can stay healthy and put together consistent performances at the NBA level. If his shoulder holds up and he gets regular playing time, there's still potential for a meaningful career. Brooklyn fans should be cautiously optimistic. They've seen this movie before with other reclamation projects, and sometimes it works out beautifully. The cost was minimal, the upside is significant, and the timeline allows for patient development. For Atlanta, this trade represents admission that their player development system failed with Bufkin. Whether that's a one-off situation or a broader organizational issue remains to be seen, but trading away a recent lottery pick for cash suggests they're more focused on immediate roster flexibility than long-term potential. The real winner or loser in this deal won't be determined for at least 2 years. By then, we'll know if Bufkin was a talent that just needed the right environment or if Atlanta correctly identified a player who couldn't make the jump to NBA-level competition. Either way, this trade serves as a perfect reminder that nothing is guaranteed in professional basketball, not even for players who seemed destined for success just a few years ago. Dreams can become nightmares quickly, but sometimes they can also be resurrected when you least expect it.